inside and out and spotting right here in the top right-hand corner from the greatest country in the world. Although we might be a little bit biased. With the red Protoss probes, we have Harstem.
Never knew he was from America, Loco. In the bottom left side of Inside and Out, we are looking at the main base of our German Zerg, representing the Shopify Rebellion. This is Lambo. Oh man, it's kind of heartbreaking to see these two players duke it out against each other with the tournament live on the line. If you guys join us later, this is the final round of the knockout bracket, which means if you win, you advance into the playoffs, and you obviously still have a chance to win the entire tournament, and you're going to be playing best of fives, something I think both these guys are very fond of. But right now, it's a best of three tournament live on the line, and it just really sucks for these guys because they love each other.
What do you think Harstem is listening to? Because he is shouting at his computer. Well, he's definitely listening to some music right now, yeah.
Harstem definitely likes older music in general, and sometimes he likes very bad Dutch music. Like proper sing-alongs.
Als de morgen is no, there's no way. There's no way he's going with that one right now, but he's definitely feeling it.
That artist that Harstem always used to listen to. He's very famous from like a long time ago, 60s, 70s. Harstem was a fan.
I'm not 100%
I'm
sure.
drawing a blank right now, but
anyways.
Doesn't matter.
So historically speaking, these two have played 42 times against each other, with Lambo winning 55% of them. So a slight advantage over there. And I would say over the last couple of years, Lambo definitely has had Harstem's number. But there's certainly a chance, and especially Harstem over the last couple of months has looked really strong again as well. So I do feel like this is going to be a very close match, but I'm kind of leaning towards Lambo myself as well. Not really expecting a whole lot of spiciness here in the earlier stages of this game. Both of these players very much so macro games.
I found it.
Or macro players, rather.
Bob Dylan. I think Harstem really likes Bob Dylan.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's a fact. I've heard him listen to a lot of songs of Bob Dylan in the past.
Maybe he was casting his own game.
Yeah, no. I'm definitely with you. I'm also leaning a little bit towards Lambo, but I do not agree with Twitch chat. 86% is way too much, especially because Lambo clearly has shown a little bit of weakness today against Trigger. Now, Trigger has just played the best StarCraft day of his entire career, I really think so. Obviously, he won Philadelphia recently, and he's had great showings online before. But what that young man from Canada showed today, defeating Lambo, defeating Sue, defeating Harstem in a nail-biting game 3, super impressive, very remarkable. But normally we wouldn't say that Trigger's PvZ is a lot better than Harstem's PvZ, because if anything, I feel like that's the weakest matchup of the 3 for Trigger. So I think it is really close. I don't think Lambo is excited about this one for many reasons, other than the fact that they are good friends. But yeah, Lambo historically is a bit stronger, is maybe someone who performs a little bit better when the lights shine the brightest and the pressure is very high, but this one is very close. It's a whole lot closer to 50-50 than it is to 87-13, that's for sure.
Yeah, maybe it's closer to like, 60-40 or something along those lines. Now, these first two Adepts getting a little bit of work done. Obviously nice because it's going to be followed up by an Oracle as well. Maybe, he's going to be able to snipe that Queen in just a moment. Kind of depends on the movement here by Lambo, but so far he should be a-okay against that first flyer.
Well, Lambo is normally someone... Oh, one Queen is actually taking a lot of damage. You do not want to lose a Queen so early. That's a bit floppy. Sorry?
That's the Adepts from earlier that softened up that Queen quite a bit.
Yeah, but if the Queen is slightly better positioned, closer to a spoil that's close to finishing up, or closer to reinforcing Queens, and that is not a pick-off that Harstem can normally find. And Lambo is actually one of the guys that I always mention when it comes to having your Queens in the correct position. But these things can start falling apart if you're suddenly working with one Queen less than you're getting used to. So Harstem definitely off to a pretty reasonable start here in game 1.
I thought he was baiting out the Spore Crawler right there, and I think he was, but apparently Lambo not taking it just yet. He's trying to get one more. That's a little bit greedy, but he did grab a couple of drones right there.
Just a single one, I believe, though, because I didn't even see it.
Only a single one?
Yeah.
Really?
So that's not great, because technically we killed the Queen without taking any damage on the Oracle, and now suddenly we have a lot of damage on both Oracles, and we only killed one drone. It is important to keep a close eye on the production tab of Lambo, because I've seen Lambo be very aggressive with a lot of roaches and queens of 58 drones on this map, more often than not. I think that's something that's right up your alley, by the way, Loco. Kind of like those builds, you get a couple queens to the other side of the map. That really is a Lambo special, and he just shows up with an insane amount of ravages very early on, way before Blink is even done. but it does not seem that he's going to go down that route, as we have an evolution chamber go down, and there are extra drones on the way.
Yeah, there's definitely potential to go for some aggressive builds like that. Now, a couple of adepts do shade straight through the center of the map. This is one of those times where you don't really quite expect these units yet. There are, well, a small group of Zerglings available. He's decided to go, by the way, for charge first.
Maybe anticipating some sort of aggression, I'm not quite sure, or Harstem just wants to be the aggressor a bit down the line in a fashion that we are kind of familiar with when it comes to Zealots +1 and a couple of cheeky Archons very early on, and maybe trying to punish Lambo if Lambo's trying to drone up a little bit too much, or just getting a cancel on the 4th hatchery, right? Like that would already be very big.
There's the Overlord speed coming up as well. We did, of course, see one of those queen drops earlier today. Now, this would be a very delayed one, if that is the option.
By that teammate, right? Scarlet brought it out.
Yeah, Scarlet definitely. And obviously, Scarlet was also part of the crew that was hanging out together before this event started.
Oh, look at the queens on the right side, trying to anticipate the Oracle's retreat path, but one of them does get picked off. Harstem now queues up a Phoenix, a little bit of a misread if you ask me. It almost feels that Harstem is already worried about a Spire going up somewhere, and he's like, just in case I can have a few Phoenixes, it can start working on his Overlord, but don't really want to have a Phoenix right now. All the resources are going to be important, because we keep an eye on the drone count of Lambo. It's kind of been at 69 for quite some time. You look at the production tab, it's a lot of Overlords, it's a lot of Roaches, +1 is finishing up, and Lambo is gonna go for one of his famous Roach attacks on inside and out, and his supply just explodes with builds like this, man. Like right now you're like, oh, the supply is really close, looks pretty good for Harstem, then you blink twice, and Lambo is gonna be close to maxing out, and the Protoss is gonna work with like 135, 140. This is going to be very difficult to defend, and I honestly, mate, don't know how good Charge is here, because Charge is good against like a couple Roaches, but against like 25, 30 Roaches, I think I'd much rather have Blink, and these Archons could already be in a bit of a pickle. I think that Harstem is in trouble here.
Yeah, Lambo's setting up the German Autobahn as he's preparing the Overlords to spew as much creep towards the other side of the map as possible, allowing those queens to transfuse one another as well. They're going to be tanking as much damage as possible.
Look at the supplies.
Yeah, Lambo's ready to go for an all-in. Now, those queens are so powerful in this position. You can't break that right here as Protoss. You can charge at that all you want, but it's not going to do anything.
So much Zerg, so many queens, so many Roaches, so many Ravages. I've seen him do this time and time again, and I'm always surprised by how Lambo gets this many units early on, even after losing a couple of drones. We do have an Immortal and a couple of static defense are going to try to go up. At the moment, this does not feel like a fair fight, but we do have a couple of Storms to work with, as the first one softens up a couple of Ravages, but Lambo just needs to make sure that he doesn't lose. Okay, that Storm is really big.
Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe there's some hope for Harstem, as these Storms are about as big as they could possibly be, yet the German Zerg is maxed out. Please explain this to me. Look.
Yeah, he's just holding down the Roach button, right? He's just sending units across the map. Harstem invested into all of those Adepts earlier that did very little. I wonder if that's one of the things he's going to be looking at, because I think that this game is pretty much over. He's now being doubled in supply by the Zerg player, despite that economical advantage that Harstem had. Sometimes StarCraft is just a numbers game, and there it is. Lambo wins a clean game number 1.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating how Loco Lambo, there's too many Locos and Lambos around, how Lambo moves out with like 125, 130 supply, the Protoss is like 108, you're like, that's kind of too close, man, to make like a Roach attack work, but Lambo has this build mapped out to a T. He just knows exactly what he can get away with, and like I said, you blink a couple times, supply skyrockets to 178, and you feel like a fight is happening. You're like, is the supply dropping? No, he's maxed out. It's at 200. Lambo is incredibly good with builds like this, and I do think that Harstem got unfortunate, because I think going for charge is pretty much the worst thing that you can have there. Zealots are good against Roaches. The Roaches are in small numbers, but if such a blob of queens, Roaches, and Ravages, the Zealots don't even know where to start.
No,
right?
the rocks work against you as well there, right? In that choke point.
And they kind of just get picked off one by one, so it would have been nicer for Harstem if he would have gone for one of those blink builds. The Storms were literally, I think, as good as they could have ever been. but it did not even get close.
How do you feel about the adepts that Harstem had? Because he had a group of, I think, like 6 or 7 adepts just kind of wandering around, and he attempted shading forward a couple times, and obviously the Zerglings were there to greet them, but that felt like a bit of an odd choice.
He was clearly looking for openings, but obviously Lambo, his defensive positioning is very good, so Harstem never felt that it was the right moment to sacrifice them, and I think that Harstem also thought that he was going to have another opportunity a bit down the road to trade out those adepts for a couple of drones, or maybe just use them as a distraction maneuver while hitting one of the new bases. I think that's what Harstem was hoping for, and suddenly he was being attacked, because this kind of stuff is just hard to sniff out. We even saw the Phoenix, right? Like obviously if Harstem is expecting a million Roaches, Ravages and Queens on his side of the map, the last unit he's ever going to make is a single Phoenix. So Harstem was planning for something that was going to happen a couple minutes down the road, and Lambo was just doing Lambo things.
Alrighty, so game number 2 in this best of 3 series is on the map Data Scene. Spawning here in the bottom left-hand corner, we have Harstem. Still singing. Love to see it.
Still vibing. In the top right side, we're looking at the main base of his teammate. It's the German Zerg taking the 1-0 lead with some good old German efficiency. This is Shopify, Rebellion's Lambo.
Yeah, that was a killer build actually. I really like how he planned that out as well by knocking down the rocks at the perfect moment and then creating the full-on highway towards the other side of the map. Working out brilliantly in his favor right there. Especially after losing one of those queens earlier, like with a build like that, you definitely don't want to lose any of those units, but it didn't even matter.
It still
just had so much stuff. Yeah, he wasn't even close to defending that.
Yeah, those tiny
even
maps.
With those storms.
Those storms were as good as they were ever going to be, but these units were just not dropping. Lambo, even during that final fight, is remaking 17 Roaches at a time. It's so quite impressive. Where does he even get the larva from, right? Aren't all the queens on the other side of the map? Aren't the queens battling? Like, I don't know how he does it. And the cool thing about Lambo, though, is that you might look at a couple of his ZVPs on Inside and Out, it's like, yeah, Lambo always does this. But there are so many different variations that he goes for. The ones of like 40-something drones, the ones of the 51 drones, the one with an Evo chamber, the one without an Evo chamber. And Harstem clearly read it as like, he's actually not going to be crazy aggressive. This is going to be more of a macro-oriented Lambo.
Yeah.
And then he still hits you with it. It just, the supply truly explodes.
Yeah, that Phoenix was a big tell, right? So he made one Phoenix right there. So there's a couple of reasons as to why you might want to do that. Maybe he expected some Muta play. That is obviously an option that we've seen Serral play quite a bit lately. So that's certainly something in the back of Harstem's mind. He ended up pushing back Overlords with it. So maybe he was a little bit concerned as well of a potential Nidus play or something along those lines. So he was thinking... Yeah, he was thinking in higher tech routes, right? He was thinking in build orders from the Zerg that were a little bit further up the tech tree and just ended up being the good old Roach train, which we've seen, well, thousands of times over the years at this level of StarCraft 2. And, well, different variations, different flavors still come out this time around. Knocking down the rocks, bringing the Overlords across the map as well with Overlord speed, hitting like an absolute truck. Not really something, though, that Lambo can do on a map like this, so we'll come up with something new, I'm sure.
One thing we do definitely have to mention is that Harstem in the second group stage got a victory over Su. Now, it does seem that Su is struggling a little bit today, maybe not having his all-time best performance. I remember Su was up 1-0, but Harstem brought it back, and even that first game was very close and competitive, so I think it is safe to say that the captain has absolutely been working on his PvZ. We see a Void Ray as an opening unit. I recently saw other Protoss do it.
Yeah, Zaun has been doing this quite a bit, and I've seen Hero actually also play it. I don't know if that's because of Zaun or not exactly sure. So there's a couple reasons to think why it can be good. First off, I think a lot of Zerg players have gotten way too good at defending Oracle, so oftentimes it doesn't even seem like you can really get a whole lot of work done. And it's one of those, like, I don't want to die to anything silly here in the next couple of minutes opener, right? Like, if, for example, there would be another push coming in, yeah, it could be something that Lambo has in mind right here, although he's not really a two-base all-inner.
Can we take a look at Lambo's Overlord vision quickly? Was that Overlord in range there to see what the follow-up unit was?
Yeah.
Yep, it looks like it. So Lambo knows that it's a single Void Ray into Oracle. I believe I saw Gerald do it against Scarlet actually on Data.
Okay.
The show
Yeah, a couple of the Koreans have messed around with it quite a bit again lately.
I'll be dead honest, I am not a fan because Void Rays are expensive. They take up a lot of supply. Just don't really do a whole lot. They're so slow, and even though the Void Ray is supposed to be an intimidating unit, I honestly feel that the Void Ray gives Zergs a sense of security, where it's like, haha, the Void Ray will. Like, I'm gonna have a queen forever, the Void Ray is not gonna do a whole lot. Void Ray is going to reveal itself. One drone is low on
there you
HP, and it does get a single drone, but other than a drone in the overlord, it's not great. This Oracle, though, does show up at a pretty lovely moment, but what a save by Lambo, man. Even though it's been a long day for him, started off in group stage 1 as well, saving 2 drones that quickly. German Zerg still got it.
Okay, so he is going to transition away from this. Harstem, that is right now, going into Twilight Council as well as the Forge, and I'm fully expecting a charge, or sorry, a blink follow-up, not a charge follow-up this time around. Lambo, in the meantime, teching up towards the lair, getting that Roach Warren going as well, and just happily making as many drones as possible. Doesn't actually have a Spore at the third, despite making, okay, he starts up another one right now, despite starting up like 4 of those earlier.
Yeah, we have the queens, and I guess with triple queen, Loco or Lambo feels that he doesn't really need it. And this is tough, man. I do like actually that Lambo brought over those queens from the main base a little bit closer towards the edge there to make sure that they can help out against the Void Ray. Double Oracle shows up in the natural. We'll grab 4 drones, and that's a little bit more than Harstem got in the previous game. So definitely not a rough start, but the first game also did not start off bad for Harstem. It's just misread the game a little bit.
There's the Overlord speed once again. I think in the previous game we saw it with the Roach speed at the same time started up, right? So it.
And we had an Evo chain, but this is the German taxi.
Yeah, this is the German taxi actually.
Yep. Last game we had a highway. This time around, it should be actually like the German Airlines or something, right? Like Berlin Airlines, because they are not going over the ground. Same build as the Scarlet showed us earlier today, with great success in her series against, was that Drogo? Yes. Scarlet versus Drogo. I mean, it's 7 best of 3s ago, guys, and.
This is a scary build, though. This is a build that kind of fell out of favor a little while ago. Main reason, of course, was just to change the queens.
No, Harstem has no vision at all. He goes up to 4 bases. He queues up an observer. All the things you don't want to do, Harstem is currently doing. And the captain is in all sorts of trouble. 0 batteries, 0 cannons. This is the first time he sees it. I absolutely hate it, Loco.
Yeah, this is the worst case scenario right now for Harstem. He had a lot of spotter units out on the map, but none of them saw this army coming in. The queens are going to be able to transfuse each other once again as soon as that creep is put on the ground. And how are you going to hold this right now? I mean, like you said, there's no static defense ready to go, and there's going to be a lot more Zerg on the back of this.
You are not, and I think Harstem knows it. History repeats himself. Harstem got eliminated by his teammate in the DreamHack Masters Valencia, and unfortunately for the captain, it's happening again. Back then it was Scarlet. This time around it is Lambo, who is obviously not ecstatic about the fact that he had to eliminate a good friend and a teammate, but he has to be happy at least that he makes it into the playoffs, and we will see more of Lambo tomorrow. And I think all of us, and especially all the Zerg fans out there, are very happy with that.
Yeah, 2 relatively old school builds, or at least maybe with a modern twist. Just bringing the queens, the roaches, and the Zerglings across. It's something we've seen time and time again over the years of StarCraft 2, and while it hasn't been too popular over the last half year or so, it's once again making a comeback.
And he is one of the very,